First semester in music appreciation.
And you have health and PE second semester?
Yes.
Okay.
Here's the long, continuous story you asked for,
like PE,
written in a natural, flowing narrative style with the requested title at the top.
PE all 4 years if you want.
Spider-Man, One Bad Day, Part 1. I am Spider-Man. That's the first thing I tell myself every morning when I wake up and pull on the mask. I'm not Peter Parker in those moments. I'm the guy who swings above the city, who stands between New York and the maniacs who want to tear it down. It isn't easy, it isn't clean, and it sure isn't pretty, but it's the life I chose.
Working on this
or maybe the life
when
that
I
chose
get to,
me. The city doesn't sleep, and neither do the villains.
At school,
in the past weeks, I've gone toe-to-toe with some of the nastiest names you'll find in a rogues gallery.
So,
the Vulture tried to clear out an armored car, wings humming like jet engines.
So I'm taking the small notebook with me since that's the pages that I started on, and I'm making a new comic.
Blanketed Times
so I'm making
Square
sure that the
smoke and
pages
illusions.
all actually,
But it turns out, holograms still tear when you hit them with a web sling. The Scorpion had poison in his tail and fire in his eyes. But even he went down when I yanked him off balance and planted him into the pavement. Rhino? That guy charged through 3 blocks like a living wrecking ball, but I figured out a way to trick him into hitting a construction crane. It wasn't graceful, but it worked. But then, things got darker. I wore the black suit. Sleek, fast, powerful, like a shadow wrapped around me. It was intoxicating, and with it, I tore through villains who'd have once given me nightmares. Kurt Connors, the Lizard, slashed at me with claws sharp enough to shred steel, but the black suit pushed me harder. Faster, meaner. I took him down in a storm of webs and rage. Chameleon tried to trick me, disguising himself as innocent bystanders, but my instincts cut through his lies, and I had him pinned before he could blink. Shocker rattled buildings with his gauntlets, but a web yank later, he was nothing more than a man tied to a lamppost. Beetle buzzed in his armor, diving at me with enough firepower to light up a block, but I was already behind him, dragging him down. And 8-Ball, thinking he could outplay me in some street game of angles and physics, learned that no trick shot beats a spider's web. That was then. Now, I'm back in the red and blue, swinging high above Manhattan. Because as much as I hated to admit it, the black suit wasn't just a costume, it was changing me. And if there's one thing I can't risk, it's becoming the very thing I fight against. Tonight, though, feels different. Tonight, everything falls apart. The raft had a breakout. A bad one. And the roster of names made my stomach turn. Vulture, Scorpion, Rhino, Lizard, Beetle, and even 8-Ball. 6 dangerous maniacs with nothing better to do than tear the city apart. And me? Just one guy with webs. One bad day was all it was going to take to see if I could handle it. The call comes quick. Vulture is at a New York bank. By the time I swing over, the sirens are already painting the street in red and blue. Civilians running for cover. And there he is, Adrian Toombs, wings sharper and sleeker than I've ever seen. A new enhanced flying suit that gleams like polished steel under the lights. He's clutching bags of cash like a greedy bird hauling prey. Not today, Feathers, I mutter, shooting a web that sticks to his boot. He beats his wings, trying to climb higher, but I yank hard and slap the other end of the web against the stone wall of the bank. He flails, screeching in frustration, and I'm already swinging up to meet him. The money slips from his grip, fluttering back to the ground like green snow. With a final shot of webbing, I plaster him to the wall in a giant sticky cocoon. One down. No rest. Police chatter leads me straight to Scorpion. He's tearing into squad cars, tail thrashing, venom dripping. The poison glows faintly in the night air, a sickly green mist curling off his stinger. He's snarling, promising to sting anyone who gets close. Brave officers keep their distance, but I don't have that luxury. I swing low, grab hold of his tail, and sling a thick web around it, tethering it to a telephone pole. He whips around snarling, but he's locked in place. You should have stuck to the desert mat, I quip before spotting a nearby mailbox. A quick web line, a hard swing, and clang. The mailbox slams into his helmet, dropping him cold. 2 down. Rhino's next. Word on the street is he's tearing through a warehouse district, smashing through trucks like they're toys. I find him in the middle of the chaos, snorting steam, fists slamming the ground. I dive in, firing webs, trying to tangle his legs, but he rips through them like paper. He charges once, twice. I barely dodge. Then he plows through a building wall and keeps running. By the time I catch my breath, he's gone, just echoes of destruction left behind. That one's going to sting. But I don't have time to dwell. The lizard is on my list, and Kurt deserves better than the monster inside him. The last fight nearly killed me, his claws cutting inches from my throat. So I go home. I pull out my notes, dig into the science. Hours pass. Chemicals mix. I work until my eyes ache, and the city outside grows quiet. Finally, I've got it. A serum, a cure. I track him down in the sewers, his guttural hisses echoing through the dark tunnels. He's hunched over, scales glistening, eyes burning yellow. He doesn't see me coming until I'm right on him. With a sharp jab of the injector, the serum courses into his bloodstream. He thrashes, roars, then slowly collapses, the monstrous scales receding. Kurt Connors lies there, unconscious, human again, for now. Beetle is next. He tries to ambush me from the skies, energy blasts lighting up the rooftops, but I've learned his tricks. I dodge, weave, then plaster his wings with webbing until he crashes into the side of a building. A few more webs, and he's gift-wrapped for the NYPD. Finally, 8-Ball. He thinks he's clever, hiding in the shadows of a pool hall, rolling explosives shaped like billiard balls. But I track him down, web snapping his weapons out of the air before they can detonate. He lunges with a cue stick like it's a spear, but one yank, and he's flat on the floor, tied up like the 8-Ball in his name. And as I stand there, catching my breath, mask damp with sweat, I realize something. This was only the beginning. The night isn't over. The city isn't safe. And tomorrow? Tomorrow could be even worse. To be continued. Do you want me to continue into part 2 with Rhino as the main focus since he got away? Or keep building toward a larger Sinister Six style showdown?
Starting to be down now because you don't have your shoes on. Only where it's not so if you have your shoes on no matter what it is, you're going to have your feet down. I'm bringing.
Got it. Here's a full continuous story. No chapters, panels, or cuts. Written like Ant-Man #1. Set in the same universe as Spider-Man: One Bad Day, but way back in 1930, with Hank Pym as Ant-Man. The year is 1930. The streets of New York are restless, caught between the glitter of jazz clubs and the shadows of the Great Depression. Men and women walk with shoulders heavy, their pockets light, and crime creeps in through every alleyway. The city is alive, but it's sick. And in the middle of it all is a man most people wouldn't look at twice. His name is Hank Pym. Hank wasn't like the gangsters filling the headlines or the police officers patrolling with billy clubs. He was a scientist, a man with questions too big for his own time. While the rest of the world struggled to scrape by, Hank buried himself in experiments, chasing a theory that size could be as much a weapon as strength. And one night, after years of obsession, it happened. He discovered a serum, what he would call the Pym particles, a liquid that could shrink matter down to impossible scales or expand it beyond measure. He tested it on inanimate objects at first, a chair, a clock, even a toy car. They all shrank, they all grew, and they all returned unharmed. But the real test came when Hank injected himself. The world tilted. His body pulled in on itself, collapsing like a shadow folding. The walls of his lab stretched into towering cliffs, the floor into a vast gray plain. He was smaller, no bigger than an ant. And that's when he realized something extraordinary. He could hear them. The ants. Their voices. A chorus of alien communication buzzing in his head. Somehow, the serum had bridged the gap between human and insect. At first, it terrified him, but then he understood. With their help, he could move unseen, strike faster than a man, and outwit enemies who thought they towered over him. The smallest hero in the world could stand against giants. That was the night Ant-Man was born. But the city didn't wait for him to get comfortable. New York in 1930 was a playground for crime families. mobsters in pinstripe suits, bootleggers in hidden speakeasies, and crooked businessmen pulling strings behind velvet curtains. The worst of them was a man called Silas Greaves, a mob boss with a stranglehold on the city's smuggling routes. He had the police in his pocket and muscle on every street corner. But what Silas wanted most was the secret formula Hank had created. Word had leaked. Someone in the scientific community had whispered about Pym's discovery, and now the mob wanted it for themselves. They came at night. Burly men in fedoras, guns gleaming in the dim light of the lab. Hank heard the window shatter and dove for his belt, slamming a vial of particles into the device he wore like a holster. The thugs stormed in, expecting an unarmed scientist. What they found was nothing. To their eyes, Hank had vanished. But he was there, smaller than a mouse, racing across the floor as ants surged from the cracks in the walls at his command. The gangsters cursed, firing bullets into the air, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't see. Ant-Man climbed up the leg of one thug, yanked a pin from his grenade belt, and leapt clear as panic erupted. Another stumbled as a swarm of ants crawled over his face, their tiny mandibles snapping. One by one, the men fell, tangled in webs of wire Hank had rigged with his insect allies. When the smoke cleared, Silas Greaves himself stepped into the lab. He was older, ruthless, his smile sharp as a blade. "So this is the little man I've been hearing about," he sneered. "Hand over the formula, Pym. Men like you don't run this city. Men like me do." But Hank wasn't about to bow to a bully. He climbed to full size, staring Greaves down, fists trembling not with fear but resolve. "This city doesn't belong to you," he said. "It belongs to the people trying to survive in it." Greaves drew a revolver, the barrel gleaming. Hank shrank in a blink, the bullet whizzing past harmlessly. He darted across the floor, climbed Greaves's coat, and whispered into his ear before delivering a swarm of ants across the man's face. "I'm everywhere you aren't looking," Hank said, growing back to normal height in an instant. Greaves hit the floor, gagging on panic as police sirens wailed outside. By the time the cops burst in, they found Silas Greaves tied up in steel wire, his men unconscious, and Hank gone. Nobody saw a hero. Nobody even knew what to call him. But in the darkness of the alleys, whispers spread. Whispers of a man who could shrink to the size of an ant, command swarms like soldiers, and bring down mob bosses no one else dared cross. For Hank, it wasn't about glory. It wasn't about being recognized. It was about protecting the city from the predators who thought they owned it. He knew there'd be more nights like this. Harder nights. Nights where the odds stacked too high, even for him. But he also knew something else. The smallest man could still cast the biggest shadow. And so the legend began. Ant-Man had taken his first step into a world that would never be the same. Do you want me to keep building? Perfect. I'll continue your storyline with Spider-Man One Bad Day Part 2, flowing naturally right after Part 1, keeping it in 2011 present time with the same tone and style. Hack Spider-Man One Bad Day Part 2. The night doesn't wait. It never does. By the time I've webbed up 8-Ball and dropped him off for the cops, my body's already aching. The guy may be a joke compared to Rhino or Lizard, but it doesn't matter. Every fight takes something out of you. And I don't get the luxury of catching my breath. Because the moment I step off that rooftop, I feel it. Motion, weight, claws. Puma. He comes out of the shadows like a bullet, slamming me into the side of a brick wall hard enough to make my ribs rattle. The man's fast, faster than I remember, and his claws spark as they scrape against the wall just inches from my face. "You've been sticking your nose in places it doesn't belong, Spider-Man," he growls, his voice low and feral. I twist, duck, kick him off. My web shooters snap open with a familiar click, and I fire twin lines that splatter across his chest. He slices them apart like paper. Great. We dance across the rooftops, claws against webs, muscles against reflexes. Every time I try to get distance, he's on me again, teeth bared, eyes glowing in the moonlight. For a second, I wonder if this is it. If this is the night the bad day finally wins. But then instinct takes over. I sidestep his final lunge, fire a web line to his back, and whip him into the wall with enough force to rattle the bricks. Before he can recover, I unload everything, layer after layer of webbing until he's cocooned against the wall, snarling but trapped. I lean against the ledge, chest heaving. mask damp with sweat. And that's when the memory hits me, the sandstorm. Months ago, Flint Marko, Sandman, turned the city into his personal desert. His body dissolved into a massive storm cloud of sand, swallowing cars, smashing windows, choking the air. I remember swinging blind through the storm, eyes stinging, lungs burning, trying to reach the center. I'd built a containment unit out of sheer desperation, a vacuum rig tied to a construction site generator. I lured him in, every grain of sand screaming at me, clawing for freedom, until finally the machine roared and pulled him down. When the air cleared, Sandman was gone, trapped, but the city was left scarred. I blink, shake it off. That was then, this is now. And right now, I don't have time to be nostalgic, because down the block, alarms are blaring. I swing fast, heart still racing from Puma, and there she is, Black Cat, Felicia Hardy. Silver hair glinting in the moonlight, a bag of cash over one shoulder, a string of diamonds around her wrist. "Hello, Spider," she purrs, vaulting from the roof of a bank to the edge of a jewelry store skylight. I don't waste time. "Not tonight, Cat." I launch a web, yanking the bag of cash from her grip. She spins, claws out, slashing the web clean before diving off the ledge. I chase her, swinging hard, cutting her off at every turn. She's fast, graceful, a dancer in black leather, and every move feels like she's already 2 steps ahead. Finally, I catch her mid-leap, tangling her legs with webbing, sending us both tumbling onto a rooftop. We roll, fists and claws colliding, until I manage to pin her arms. "You don't have to do this," I tell her, breathless. She smirks, "And you don't have to stop me." Then with one twist, she's free. A flash of claws cuts the webbing, and in the split second it takes me to blink, she's gone. Vanished into the skyline, jewels and all. I stand there, fists clenched, feeling the sting of failure. Another one who got away, another problem for tomorrow. But tomorrow is already here, because when I swing past a quiet street later that night, I see something I shouldn't. Captain George Stacy, standing in the glow of a lamppost, a folder tucked under his arm, speaking low into a phone. His voice carries just enough for me to catch. "Kingpin, Wilson Fisk. If we're going to take him down, we do it carefully. No mistakes, no warnings. We bring him down before he spreads further into this city." My stomach tightens. Kingpin isn't just another crook. He's the crook. And if Stacy's planning to move against him, that puts everyone in danger, especially Gwen. I find her later at Empire State University. She's sitting on the steps, books stacked beside her, headphones dangling. She looks up, startled, as I drop onto the railing. "Spider-Man?" she says softly. "Listen, Gwen," I start, voice steady. "Your dad, he's planning something dangerous, something with Kingpin. And if Fisk finds out..." I hesitate. "You need to keep an eye on him. Make sure he doesn't walk into something he can't walk out of." Her eyes widen. Fear flickers there, but so does determination. She nods. And then the night shifts again. Because hundreds of miles away, at the X Mansion in Westchester, a figure walks the halls of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. The cold follows him wherever he goes, frost clinging to the walls. Bobby Drake, Iceman. He pauses at a window, looking out into the night as the first snowflakes of winter drift down. He doesn't know it yet, but the path he's on is about to cross with mine. And when it does, everything changes. To be continued. Got it. Here's a full-flowing story for Hulk #1, set in the year 2000, with Hulk facing off against the Abomination in this universe. Hulk #1. The year was 2000. The world had just stepped into a new millennium, but for Bruce Banner, life felt like the same endless cycle of fear, rage, and running. He hadn't asked for this curse. One mistake, one explosion of gamma radiation, and the man he had been was gone forever. What remained was the Hulk, the unstoppable, uncontrollable force that burst out of him whenever his heart pounded too fast, whenever his anger took hold. The military saw him as a weapon. Civilians saw him as a monster. And Bruce? Bruce only saw chains. He lived in shadows now, drifting from town to town under false names, always watching, never resting. But fate has a way of finding monsters. It started with whispers, soldiers disappearing in the desert, entire outposts flattened. Survivors spoke of a creature like the Hulk, but twisted, scales instead of skin, eyes burning with fury, strength rivaling his own. Bruce knew it wasn't him. He hadn't been there, which meant something worse, Someone else had tried to recreate him, and they had succeeded. His name was Emil Blonsky. Once a decorated soldier, proud and arrogant, Blonsky had volunteered for a new program, one meant to match, maybe even surpass, the Hulk. The experiment worked, but at a cost. Blonsky's body warped, his humanity rotted away, and what remained was the Abomination, a monster even bigger and stronger than the Hulk, but with one cruel difference. Blonsky still had his mind, and his mind wanted vengeance. The first clash came in the ruins of an old Nevada town. Bruce had been passing through, keeping his head down, when the ground shook beneath him. Cars flipped, windows shattered. A roar unlike any he had heard before ripped through the air. When Bruce saw him, his blood ran cold. The Abomination was towering, green scales shining under the sun, claws digging into the earth, and he was smiling. "Banner!" Blonsky's voice was guttural but clear. "Finally, the great Hulk stands before me. All these years, you've been the accident, the mistake. But me? I am perfection." Bruce barely had time to mutter, "Oh no," before the rage took him. His skin split, his muscles swelled, and the Hulk thundered out of him with a roar that shook the sky. The desert became their battlefield. Hulk charged, fists like wrecking balls, but Abomination caught the punch and slammed him through a building. Hulk roared back, grabbing a tanker truck and smashing it against Blonsky's chest. Fire erupted, but Abomination only laughed, swatting Hulk into the dirt. Every blow rattled the earth. Cars crumpled like toys. Roads cracked and split. The military arrived, tanks circling, helicopters buzzing overhead, but their weapons were nothing compared to the clash of titans below. The Hulk fought with fury, raw and unfiltered, but the Abomination fought with precision. He knew how to counter every strike, every move, and it showed. Hulk bled. Hulk fell. But Hulk never stayed down. With a roar that shattered glass for miles, Hulk tore up the ground itself, slamming chunks of concrete into his enemy. He leapt high, crashing down with enough force to crater the street, pinning Blonsky beneath tons of rubble. The Abomination clawed and fought, but Hulk's rage only grew. He hammered fists again and again until the earth shook and dust filled the air. When it cleared, both monsters were battered, but Hulk stood, barely. Abomination snarled, his voice strained but mocking. "You can't kill me, Hulk. I'll always be here, stronger, smarter, better." Hulk leaned in, eyes glowing with fury. "Hulk, strongest there is." And with one final smash, the ground itself split, swallowing the Abomination into the ruins below. By the time the military scrambled in, only rubble remained. No body, no proof, just the whisper of a monster who would return. Bruce Banner staggered away before they could find him, his chest heaving, his body still trembling with the Hulk's fury. He knew it wasn't over. Emil Blonsky was still out there, somewhere, waiting. And when he came back, it would be worse. The world thought it was entering a bright new millennium. But for Bruce Banner, it was the dawn of a darker age. Because as long as the Hulk existed, so too would the Abomination. To be continued. Perfect. Here's a full-flowing origin story for your timeline. The Amazing Spider-Man #1. The year is 2009. New York City buzzes with life, streets alive with yellow cabs, honking horns, and people rushing through a world that never stops. For most, it's just another year. But for a boy named Peter Parker, 13 years old and already carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, it's the beginning of something much bigger. Peter wasn't like the other kids at Midtown Junior High, where others played sports or ran in packs of friends. Peter buried himself in books. Science was his comfort. Microscopes, equations, circuits. He saw beauty where others only saw boring homework. But it made him a target. Flash Thompson and his buddies didn't see a future genius. They saw a punching bag. And Peter, skinny and awkward, never fought back. His home life wasn't much easier. His parents were gone, taken from him too early, and he lived in a modest house in Queens with Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They were kind, gentle, but old enough that Peter often felt like the world had passed him by before he'd even had a chance to enter it. He wanted something more. He wanted to matter. And then came the field trip. The halls of Oscorp Laboratories gleamed with chrome and glass, a temple of science in the heart of the city. Peter's eyes were wide the moment he walked in. Displays of genetic research, whirring with experiments that seemed pulled from the future. It was everything he dreamed of. He lingered longer than the others, his nose practically pressed to the glass of a chamber filled with genetically altered spiders. The guide's words barely registered. Genetic manipulation, enhanced DNA, the future of medicine. All Peter heard was possibility. And then one of the spiders slipped free. It landed silently on his hand, so small, so ordinary. Peter barely noticed before the sting came. Sharp, hot. It lanced up his arm like fire, and he staggered. Nobody else saw it. Not Flash, not the teacher, not even the guide. Just Peter, clutching his hand, his vision swimming. He told himself it was nothing. Just a spider bite. But that night, everything changed. He woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a drum. The world looked different. Sharper, brighter, louder. He could hear cars from blocks away, feel the vibrations of footsteps through the floorboards. His hands stuck to the wall when he stumbled. His feet clung to the ceiling when he tried to steady himself. Panic set in until he realized what it meant.